When you think of medieval knights, swords and armor immediately spring to mind. Those were the essentials absolutely indispensable. But if that's all they had, they'd hardly survive those long marches. The truth is, a knight's kit was also packed with very mundane, even starkly practical items. Oil, salt, and yes, even underwear. Imagine the reality. You're a knight, about to embark on a 4-day journey to the battlefield. What would you stuff into that leather or rough-spun cloth bag slung over your shoulder? Not just to fight, but first and foremost to survive. Let's take a closer look at what was truly in a warrior's backpack of this era. Inside a small castle in northern France in the year 1275, a low-ranking knight is preparing for a march to the city of Rouen. He's not wealthy, but honor is his life. Accompanying him, perhaps, is just one servant to carry the bulk of the necessities. Inside his worn leather bag, each item is checked and arranged. First, food, the fuel for the arduous days on the road. Rock-hard loaves of bread baked dry to prevent mold would be a constant companion. Next, smoked bacon or heavily salted meat for protein. A few pieces of hard cheese, also well salted, to add some fat. And of course, a water skin filled with weak ale or a bit of cider, a safer drink than the river or stream water of that time. Then, the essential survival tools. A small knife useful for cutting food, making repairs, and if needed, as a last-ditch defensive weapon. Flint and tinder, because fire meant warmth, hot water, and could ward off wild animals. A piece of tanned leather or thick oilcloth rolled up ready to provide shelter from rain, to lie on, or even to bandage a wound in an emergency. When it came to personal hygiene, everything was minimalist. A piece of coarse cloth served multiple purposes, wiping sweat, washing his face. A little salt was carried not just for seasoning, but also for scrubbing hands and feet, or diluted for rinsing the mouth and disinfecting minor scratches. Sometimes a few dried herbs with antibacterial properties were carefully wrapped up. And not to be forgotten were leather thongs or fabric scraps. These would be used to line the inside of his heavy metal armor, to reduce the painful chafing against his skin during long hours of marching under a scorching sun or in pouring rain. Everything was packed, each item there for a reason. The servant, if present, would carry the more cumbersome baggage. The long journey began with these small but essential preparations. The sun was high. After many continuous hours on horseback or on foot, if the terrain was treacherous, the order to rest was given. This was the time to replenish spent energy. Lunch was usually very simple, mostly consisting of what had been prepared that morning. The knight would take out his dry bread, salted meat, and cheese. If they were lucky enough to stop near a clean stream, they might dip the bread into the water to soften it. The weak ale or cider from the water skin was also consumed sparingly. If the troop had the means to make a short camp, or was accompanied by soldiers carrying more cumbersome gear, a simple hot meal might be prepared. A copper mug or a small iron pot would be used to boil some water or heat up cold meat. But for a low-ranking knight, carrying such heavy cooking utensils himself wasn't always feasible. Usually, the servant, if he had one, would handle this. And amidst these starkly practical items, sometimes lay objects of deep personal significance. It wasn't uncommon for a knight to carry a small amulet, believing it would protect him from harm. It could be a family heirloom, a supposed holy relic, like a saint's bone fragment, or a crumpled letter from a loved one back home. Some carefully kept a handwritten prayer scroll, seeking spiritual solace amidst the harsh realities of war. These small items, though not directly helpful in combat, were an invaluable source of spiritual strength. After a brief lunch, the troop would set off again. The afternoon was often when fatigue began to set in, and vigilance had to be heightened more than ever, as the risk of ambush always lurked on deserted roads or through dense forests. Besides the longsword and possibly a lance usually carried when mounted, a knight's gear included important auxiliary weapons. A sturdy dagger tucked into his belt or boot was always ready for unexpected close-quarters combat, or when his main sword couldn't be used. A strong coil of rope was also a versatile tool, useful for tying up prisoners, hauling objects, or even navigating difficult terrain. Iron gauntlets not only protected the hands when wielding weapons, but also helped prevent cuts when grappling with an opponent in chaotic skirmishes. Danger didn't just come from the enemy. Accidents could always happen. A fall from a horse, a stray arrow, or simply a cut while handling daily tasks could lead to serious consequences. Therefore, basic medical knowledge and a few simple first aid items were indispensable. The kit usually contained some clean cloth torn from old clothes or prepared in advance used for bandaging wounds. Tree sap, especially pine resin, was used as a natural antiseptic and to help stop bleeding. Honey, with its antibacterial properties, was sometimes carried to apply to open wounds. And of course, strong alcohol, if available, was not just for drinking, but also an effective disinfectant when cleaning a wound before bandaging. When a comrade was injured, these items could mean the difference between life and death before more professional medical help, which was very rare on the battlefield, could arrive. Dusk fell, signaling the end of a tiring day's march. Finding a safe place to rest for the night was the top priority. Ideally, it would be a friendly village, a monastery, or at least a defensible area. But more often, especially when in enemy territory or a desolate place, the knight's sleep would be right on the ground. If lucky, he might find a relatively flat spot, perhaps laying down his thick cloak to avoid the dampness and cold rising from the earth. A servant, if accompanying him, and equipped for it, might set up a small, simple canvas tent enough to shield his master from rain and dew. But even then, comfort was a luxury. To keep warm at night, especially in the cold climates of northern France, a thick woolen or fur-lined coat was an inseparable item. A sheepskin or a large piece of coarse cloth could be rolled up to serve as a blanket or wrapped around the body. Sleep was often light, always vigilant for strange noises. Even while sleeping, safety was paramount. The small knife, the trusty personal defense item, was often hidden in his clothes or placed right under his makeshift pillow. If the troop camped in the wilderness, maintaining a few torches or a small fire throughout the night was necessary not only for warmth, but also to deter any wild animals that might wander by. The sleep of a medieval knight was a brief respite, always ready for the challenges of the new day. So there you have it. A knight's gear wasn't just about swords and armor. It was a collection of essential items reflecting a life of hardship, fraught with danger and demanding extraordinary endurance. Try to imagine. Could you survive even a day on horseback with over 20 kilograms, that's over 44 pounds, of gear and equipment on you without modern WCs, no comfortable hotels, and always in a state of readiness to fight at any moment? We in the 21st century, with our countless modern conveniences, can easily underestimate the living conditions of the past. But looking back, perhaps it's precisely their ability to endure hardship, their meticulous preparation for the worst, and even their readiness to face death that should make our generation pause, reflect, and perhaps bow our heads in respect. They weren't just warriors. They were masters of survival.